Good morning, virtual learners of Valenzuela City. Welcome to Lesson 4 of Grade 7 English. All you need to do is to listen very carefully as we discover the rules of the English language. Together, we will discuss the voices of the verb, the active, and the passive voice. For our discussion today, we shall focus on this competency for Grade 7 English, and that is to use the passive and active voice meaningfully in varied contexts. These are our learning targets for today. 1. Identify active and passive voice. 2. Discuss the rules in tenses when transforming the voice of the verb. And 3. Rewrite sentences from active to passive and from passive to active. Have your learning packets ready because we will be using the learning material prepared by Mrs. Edita Filarino, Master Teacher from Lawang Bato National High School. I want you to take a look at these two sentences. Sentence 1. Gary discovered the vaccine for COVID-19. Sentence 2. The vaccine for COVID-19 was discovered by Gary. The first thing that we need to look at in identifying the voice of the verb is the performer or the actor of the action in a sentence. Why is that so? Because the voice refers to the form of a verb that indicates when a grammatical subject performs the action or is the receiver of the action. When a sentence is written in the active voice, the subject performs the action. In the passive voice, the subject receives the action. Let us go back to the given sentences. Will you help me identify the subject in sentence number 1? That's correct. Gary is the subject. What is the verb in the sentence? Discovered. Very good. Does Gary, which is our subject, perform the action of discovering the vaccine for COVID-19? The answer is yes. In other words, the verb is in active voice because the subject is the performer of the action in the sentence. Now, let us take a look at the subject in sentence number 2. Will you help me identify the subject? Great! The vaccine for COVID-19. Since we're talking about an actor, do you think the subject performed the action in the sentence? Definitely no. So, where is the performer of the action? Take a look at the by phrase. Does it contain the actor? Yes. In other words, the subject is not the performer, so the verb is in the passive voice. Sometimes, the by phrase is imaginary. Sentence number 2 can be written like this. The vaccine for COVID-19 was discovered. Still, the sentence is in passive voice, only that the actor is not indicated. So, remember, when the subject is the agent of the action, then the verb is active. And when the subject is not the agent of the action, then the verb is passive. Let us now test your understanding. I want you to write an A if it is active and a B if it is passive. You can write your answer on any piece of paper that you have there at home. Sentence 1. We support our medical frontliners. Sentence 2. Some establishments have been closed. Which between the two sentences is in the active voice? Very good. It's sentence number 1. Will you help me transform it from active to passive? In order for us to do that, it is necessary to recall sentence patterns. Now, let us mark the sentence. We is the subject. Support is the verb or the transitive verb. Our medical frontliners functions as the direct object. To recall, a direct object receives the action of the subject. So the pattern of sentence number 1 is SDO. Identifying the object helps us easily transform active to passive voice because the direct object will become the subject when we want to change the voice from active to passive. Now, look at sentence number 1 when we transform it into passive voice. Medical frontliners were supported by us. Let us have sentence number 2. Does the subject perform the action? No. In this sentence, the actor of the action is missing. So we have to look for a subject that is within the context of the sentence. Who do you think, or what do you think, has the ability to close some establishments? The owner, the government, or it can be a situation like a pandemic. So to transform this sentence from active to passive, we say, the pandemic has closed some establishments. Notice the sentence pattern now. The pandemic as the subject, has closed as the verb, some establishments as the direct object, and the pattern is now subject, transitive verb, and the direct object. If you need more help, do not worry because you can always go back to this lesson and ask your teacher for an assistance. I know that you can do it. My dear virtual learners, have you noticed about the changes in tense when sentences are transformed from active to passive voice? We also need to take note of these changes. Are you ready to know more about the voices of verbs? Now let us continue with our discussion. First, we need to recall the tenses or aspects of verb. We shall have an intensive discussion on the simple present tense, the simple past tense, the future tense, the present perfect tense, the past perfect tense, the present progressive tense, and the past progressive tense. Let us first have the simple present tense and the simple past tense. Take a look at these examples. Sentence A, Joanna observes social distancing. Sentence B, Joanna observed social distancing. Both sentences are in the active voice, but look at the verb used in the sentences. The verb observes in sentence A is in simple present tense, while the verb observed in sentence B is in simple past tense. How do we now transform the sentences from active to passive? Take note that there must also be a change in the verb. For the present tense, use the formula simple present of be plus the past participle when transforming it to passive voice. For the past tense, use the formula simple past of be plus the past participle when transforming it to passive voice. Be verbs are is, are, was, where, so it also needs to agree with the number of the subject. Singular for is and was, plural subject for are and where. If we will transform sentence A to passive voice, our understanding of the sentence pattern will help. The object of the sentence becomes the subject. So sentence A becomes, social distancing is observed by Joanna, while sentence B becomes, social distancing was observed by Joanna. Take note of the formula in transforming the voice from active to passive when the verb is in simple present and simple past tense. Now, it's your turn. Transform these sentences from active to passive voice. Sentence 1, she wears a surgical mask. Sentence 2, she wore a surgical mask. I will give you 1 minute to think about your answer. The sentences are written like this in the passive voice. Sentence A, surgical mask is worn by her. Sentence B, a surgical mask was worn by her. Are your answers correct? What if the verb is in simple future? Say, for example, Filipinos will win the battle against the virus. If this is the case, then the verb should also be changed. Let us use a simple strategy of transposing the subject at the end of the sentence so we may start with the object. The battle against the virus. The formula for the verb is will be plus the past participle of the verb win. What is the past participle of win? The answer is won. Once you're done changing the verb, you can now write the by phrase. So to complete the sentence, it now becomes, the battle against the virus will be won by Filipinos. Now, try changing this sentence from active to passive. We will support the project of the government. You have 30 seconds to answer. Time is up. Here is the answer. The project of the government will be supported by us. Did you get it correctly? What if the verb is in perfect tense? To recall, verbs in perfect tense contain helping verbs such as has and have for present perfect tense and had for the past perfect tense. Let me give you an example. Secretary Briones has moved the opening of classes. Present perfect. Secretary Briones had moved the opening of classes. Past perfect. In order to transform those sentences, we shall use this formula. Verbs in present perfect tense, when transformed in the passive voice, use has or have been plus the past participle of the verb. Verbs in the past perfect tense, when transformed in the passive voice, use had been plus the past participle of the verb. How do we now transform the given examples? First, we have to select the subject and transfer them at the end of the sentence and make it a by phrase. By Secretary Briones. The subject now becomes the opening of classes, which is the object in the original sentence. Now, let us apply the rules. For present perfect tense, the sentence becomes, the opening of classes has been moved by Secretary Briones. For past perfect tense, the sentence becomes, the opening of classes had been moved by Secretary Briones. Now you can do this. Try to transform the sentence from active to passive. Students have received the learning packets. You have 30 seconds to think about your answer. Time is up. The answer is, the learning packets have been received by the students. Sometimes, the verbs can be in progressive form, meaning to say, the verbs in ing form. Continuous forms may be in present and past tense. Example, The experts are calling the situation as the new normal. The experts were calling the situation as the new normal. When we transform verbs in the continuous form, we should follow a very easy step. Use this formula for present progressive. Is or are being plus the past participle. Use this formula for the past progressive. Was or were being plus the past participle. So to transform the sentences, we can write them like this. For present progressive, the situation is being called as the new normal by the experts. For past progressive, the situation was being called as the new normal by the experts. Now let us have more sentences to transform. And this is the sentence. The pandemic is limiting some international flights. Can you transform this sentence into passive voice? Remember to get the object. In this sentence, the object is some international flights. It will now serve as the subject while we change the verb following the formula. So our sentence will be, some international flights are being limited by the pandemic. In order to deepen your understanding about this lesson, your teacher in English will ask you to complete the activities and assessment on your learning packets. This time, we will be answering some questions from you. I want you to type your questions in the comment section of this live stream. And I will give you 2 minutes to type in your question, which we will answer when the music stops. Welcome back. So our moderator has already selected questions and let's try to answer them. Question number 1 comes from Genti de Leon National High School. And the question is, do pronouns also change when we transform from active to passive? That is a very good question. We do not use the same pronoun when we transform the voice. Some pronouns can only be used as subjects while others as objects. Like, for example, the pronoun I can only be used as a subject. If you want to make it an object, you have to use the pronoun me. The pronoun you as a subject can be still you if used as an object. He becomes him, she becomes her, it is also the same as it as an object, we becomes us, you is also the same when you use it as an object, and they becomes them used as an object. For example, if the sentence is in active voice, he distributes the food packs. So in passive voice, the food packs are distributed by him. Notice the change in pronoun from he as the subject and him as an object. Thank you for that question. Question number 2 is from Veinte Reales National High School. And the question is, how does the sentence pattern help us easily transform sentences? In understanding the voices of the verb, you need to recall your lessons on the past participle of the verb, pronouns as subject and object, aspects and tenses of verb, and sentence pattern. It is helpful because it allows us to easily spot the subject. As a rule, the subject in the active voice will be your subject in the passive voice. In the same example, he distributes the food packs. The sentence pattern is subject, transitive verb, and direct object. In transforming it, get the object and make it your subject. The food packs are distributed by him. Thank you for that question. Let's now have question number 3 from Polo National High School. The question is, do we also follow the same rule in transforming passive to active voice? The answer is yes. Same rules to be observed when you transform from passive to active and vice versa. Example, the food packs are distributed by him. 1. Get the subject. In the active voice, the subject is the performer and it can be found in the by phrase if there is a by phrase. In this case, him cannot be a subject, so we change it to he. 2. Identify the tense of the verb and follow the formula. In this case, the tense is in the present tense. Number 3, the subject in the passive voice becomes an object in the active voice. So the sentence will become, he distributes the food packs. Congratulations for making it today. Thank you for your active participation. But there are a few things that I want you to keep in mind. Active voice means the subject performs the action in the sentence. Passive voice means the subject receives the action in the sentence. When we transform voices of the verb, we need to take note of the changes in the tense as well. So here is a helpful table of the verbs that you can use. Your teacher in English will see you for follow-up discussions. For the meantime, during your independent learning, your task is to answer activities in what I can do and the assessment task. You can always go back to this discussion if there are parts that you missed. Always keep those rules in mind. Thank you and enjoy learning online. This is Sir Gilbert Ramos for Valenzuela Live. Until our next meeting, have a great day.